So, today in clinic, or this week in clinic, this word came up a lot, arthritis, okay? And in one extreme case, somebody had been told that the pain in their knee was arthritis, and then subsequently they'd gone to another practitioner, a physiotherapist, as it happens, but it could have been any other practitioner, who said, yes, it'll spread through your entire body. So we're dealing with a person in here who is now fearful. They're fearful that their arthritis will spread through their body and they are on a downward trajectory. And that is something we hear a lot. Now, I'm just going to talk here about the theories and the practice of some of these things to just get you thinking a little bit about the underlying occurrences that are happening in your body. Okay, so I hear arthritis. I say to the person, understand what that means. Arth means joint. Itis means inflammation. So fundamentally, at its basic level, and remember that's how we try to look at principles in this clinic, at its principle, we have a joint where two bones meet and there is some inflammation. Okay, so if we look here, these two bones in the toe, here's the big toe, we have two bones together and they are designed to move together correctly without inflammation. Why might they inflame? They might inflame because the tendon that sits along the top of the foot, or the tendon that sits underneath, or the muscular structure that webs across the feet, it might be that those tissue tensions are too tight and they are forcing the two bones to either work together in a kind of a way that means there's wear and tear on one side and not on the other, or it can't move at all. And then that encourages even more build-up of uric acid, okay, which is generally an itis, because acidity equals inflammation equals itis. So understanding that all those things are the same, somebody might say to you, take an anti-inflammatory. The anti-inflammatory reduces the inflammation. It doesn't stop these bones rubbing against each other wrongly. The only thing that will do that is easing the tissue tensions, if that's what it is, and or chemically changing in this area the pH from acidic to alkali. Now, some people say, that's rubbish. Acidity in the body doesn't matter. It does. And oncologists have been aware of it for a very, very long time, okay? So we're not arguing about whether these things are correct or not. They are correct, quite simply, okay? And if you take an anti-inflammatory tablet, it reduces the inflammation, but it's not dealing with anything. But if you start to use something like apple cider vinegar or Epsom salts, which are high in magnesium, and you're in a bath with it, or you use magnesium oil spray or whatever, it alters the pH and it helps the body to become more alkali or more in balance. Okay, so that's just the thought for the day. Okay, if somebody comes into me and says my arthritis is going to take over my entire body, yes, there's lots of different sorts. There's osteoarthritis, where the bone is on the bone. But sometimes that's because the two bones, and I should have picked a knee joint for this, shouldn't I? But sometimes it's because the two bones are really against each other and wearing the cartilage away on one little side here, okay? Where when we restore muscular tension correctly, the gap is there. I remember once, fairly recently, they were talking about MRIs and they were saying we can now MRI so tightly down that we can start to predict arthritis. And you sort of think about that a bit and you think, what could that possibly mean? And the only thing that I can deduce from that they can be meaning is they can see that the gap is narrowing and narrowing, and therefore over time that joint's going to become less happy. And when it becomes less happy and has less movement, it's going to get a build-up of uric acid, the lymphatic flow won't be running and things like that, and it's going to become more and more and more unhappy. But that's not really predicting a condition developing. It's just saying eventually that joint's not going to be very happy. But enter some soft tissue work and some understanding of the fact that you can alter your foods. There are some foods that encourage alkalinity as opposed to acidity. And you can have pH sticks, which you can buy, that show your pH, and you can read your saliva. And within weeks, you can alter whether your body's in an alkali or an acidic state. Now, in Kenilworth, we're quite lucky that we have Margaret Hills, who are a world recognised specialist in arthritis. But it just helps sometimes to know some of this underlying stuff and to try not to get afraid and not to catastrophise. And that's the biggest thing in your mind. Do not catastrophise when you hear this. You know, our inflammation in the body is not to be encouraged in chronic states, but inflammation is also, on the other side, your body's natural healing. So your body responds. If I have a cut on my finger, it brings in the soldiers, it inflames the area, it increases the heat to kill bacteria, it sort of generally sends in extra blood and so on, and it swells up, it could get hot and so on. That is the body's natural healing process. It's when the acidity gets out of control, you can get rheumatoid arthritis, where you've got inflammation in the joint, but it's happening because of an autoimmune. Your body's overactively trying to heal itself and turns in on itself. There's an awful lot of nuances when it comes to understanding illnesses and things that are labelled as conditions, about what's going on in the body, and how if you look at the body holistically as a whole, if I am walking constantly more loaded onto one leg, I'm always standing on that leg, it's just a question of which joint's going to have arthritis first. Is it going to be the ankle? Because the foot is misaligned and potentially we're getting flat feet, pronating, whatever. Is it going to be the knee? Is it going to be the hip? And as we load on that leg, we shorten that leg, and then we start to get problems on the longer leg. And so these things then are a pattern, and they grow and grow, and the number of things happening simultaneously are enormous, and people go, I'm completely broken. Whereas when somebody looks at you holistically and starts to unpick the process of what's going on, restoring, in the case of Bowen, restoring the balance so that my shoulder's not up here and I'm not loading more down my left-hand side, but just generally starting to put those patterns in, starting to get joints to be able to bend again because we've reduced swelling from lymphatic or whatever, getting people walking properly so that their feet are flexing properly, so they're activating, and the hand is the same as the foot, but activating the pump in their calves, and suddenly healing starts. Bodies start to recover their ability to function properly. Hope that helps.